I recall that Leslyn Lewis, who had a very strong race for the leadership of the Canadian Conservative Party, an accomplished black woman, an immigrant, a lawyer, very thoughtful, had a very strong showing, and in the end, the CBC gave her precisely 1 minute and 45 seconds of airtime because a strong, thoughtful, black woman, immigrant lawyer, well, that just broke the narrative. At the same time, and this was before Kamala Harris was chosen as Biden's vice presidential pick, the CBC gave 20 times as much coverage to Kamala Harris, a foreign political candidate who at that point in time had merely succeeded in losing the Democratic presidential nomination. And so it is in the race recently in the United States Congress. Of course, there was the mighty presidential election that's still being counted. But across America, there were a new bumper crop of Republican women, including young women and minority women, success stories, immigrant women from Vietnam, people of Cuban descent. But of course, the attention was focused on the left-wing Democrat squad, as they call us. Joining us now via Skype from the West Coast is our friend Joel Pollak, senior editor-at-large at Breitbart.com. Joel, the idea of young, powerful, high-energy women being a Republican force, that just confounds the left too much, so they just pretend it doesn't exist. Am I right?
Well, first of all, let me explain my outfit. I'm about to go boxing, take out my frustrations from the week. So this is my sporting hobby. I go and punch some leather a few times a week. But the women in the Republican Party know how to be fighters. And I think one of the reasons that the Republican Party is attracting so many talented women and minorities is because Americans like a challenge. And when you tell Americans that the Democratic Party is going to set aside certain positions, they're going to use identity politics. Here in California, they're going to reserve corporate board seats for people who are historically disadvantaged. That doesn't really motivate people to do better, to do more, to break the mold. But the Republicans say, we're not going to do any of that. We're just going to judge you as you are, but we're open to anybody who has the talent to compete. That ironically produces the kind of freshman class that Republicans are going to arrive in Washington with in January. The 10 seats that Republicans have won so far in the House elections of 2020 are 100% women and minority candidates. And that 100% statistic is going to stick around because there is a Korean American woman who's about to win her race in Orange County, California. She's ahead by several thousand votes. It's probably going to be called in the next few days if it hasn't been this morning already. So Republicans are attracting talented women, talented minorities who want to make their mark on American politics and don't want to be reduced to their identity, don't want to be handed a set of talking points by a Democratic Party that essentially treats them as if they are functionaries carrying out a kind of representative role, but not really seen as future leaders. It's interesting that Kamala Harris, who is presumably our vice president-elect, almost never spoke to reporters once during the entire general election campaign. From the time she was nominated in mid-August to Election Day, I think she held maybe one or two press briefings. They were all very brief, something like 10 minutes or less, and they were all in the presence of Joe Biden. She never really sat down with the press for spontaneous, extemporaneous questions. So that's the role that the Democratic Party reserves for women and minorities. You basically follow the script and you offer different versions of the accusation that the Republicans are racist and greedy and so forth. Whereas Republicans don't put any labels on people. They don't hand a script to people. The people who are running in these races, they launch their own campaigns. They've got to raise their own money. If they do very well, they get some interest from national Republican Party organizations and donors. But these are all startup candidates. And it's incredible that they've come so far and done so well. But it tells you also that Donald Trump, who may be on his way out as president, has diversified the Republican Party by sheer force of example and against a media and an opposition that have constantly referred to him as Adolf Hitler that are referred to as supporters, as neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and so forth. Christiane Amanpour was on CNN yesterday talking about how the Trump presidency reminded her of the Nazi regime in 1938 on Kristallnacht. Now, that's a form of Holocaust denial when you reduce the unique suffering of the Holocaust to some kind of ordinary political event. That is, kind of Holocaust denial is recognized as such by scholars in the field. But CNN gets away with it because everything is permissible with regard to Trump. And yet, Trump has attracted this outstanding crop of female and minority candidates for the House of Representatives. He has, as someone said, longer coattails in defeat than Joe Biden had in victory.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.